Welcome, I'm Dr. Maureen Frank, host of today's Lobocast at Sul Ross State University. Joining me today are 3 graduate students from our Natural Resources program. So welcome, everyone. And first, I'd like you just to say your name, and if you could give us a summary of your research in just one sentence, or your thesis title, maybe if you have it already.
Okay, my name is Jared Sneers. I'm the Alameda Creek Conservation Coordinator, and I'm going to be doing a little bit of research on the low-tech process-based restoration practices. These are loose rock structures and also brush weirs to try to slow down erosion.
Great.
I'm Shelby Duperier. This is my first semester at Sul Ross as a non-thesis graduate student, and I'm going to be helping out on a study dealing with owls out in the Davis Mountains.
I'm Haley Schultz. This is also my first semester here. I'm working on scaled quail population management up at 9 Point Mesa Ranch.
All right. Thanks, everyone. So, Jared, we've got to unpack what you said first, because today's world, everybody wants to be high-tech, and you just said you're doing some low-tech things. So get us excited about your low-tech processes.
Okay, well, this is just like gathering rocks and putting them in like gullies to stop gully erosion, and also getting hopefully more vegetation to grow in these spots that have been degraded over the years.
So what happened to get these spots to, it sounds like they're not in such a good condition?
I think a lot of it has to do with maybe climate change, maybe some of the longer periods of dry, and then the heavy rains and everything washing out.
So literally we're just using rocks and brush to make the water not run off the landscape so quickly.
Right.
It's that simple, right? As a simple project?
Pretty simple. Finding we got some challenges. It's going to take a lot of large landscapes. It's going to take a lot of material to make a difference, I believe.
So part of what you're measuring then is kind of the ability of these different treatments to make a difference and see how that works across the landscape?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, to see if we're going to make a difference to the water table, to some of these riparian aquifers or the deep water aquifers, if there's any, if the vegetation and slowing down water capture on the landscape will eventually make a difference.
Okay. So it's kind of this question of, we all want to do our part, right, to help the environment. And sometimes you think, does it really matter if I do this one small thing? So if I build one small rock dam on my property, is it going to help? We'll find out. Right?
We'll find out. We're gonna try it, and if we could get the neighbors on board and they build some, and eventually it catches on, it would be. I think it's something that in the long term could really help us.
Yeah. If everybody just picks up your one piece of trash, it might not seem like a lot, but if everybody's doing that, that makes a big difference. And if we can get across the landscape, people understanding the impacts of erosion, right?
Yeah.
And the solution to that doesn't have to be technical. It doesn't have to be crazy expensive. It's moving around some rocks.
Our Native American people have done it out here for a long time.
Yeah.
And it may be something that we have to get back to.
Yeah. Right. Shelby, take me a little bit deeper on our dive with owls. So in our previous episode, somebody mentioned owls, and there's owls in Coconut Park, but I think you're talking about a little bit different species than like our common gray horned owl.
Yeah. So one species in particular that I've studied a little bit so far is the flammulated owl. They're highly migratory, so they aren't necessarily always going to be here in Texas all the time. Like, it's more of on their migration south or coming back. And it's just trying to understand where they are in this area as they're passing through. A few of the other owls that we're concerned with is like the spotted owl, which is a species of concern. And so those are being threatened right now by barred owls. So those are a high priority. So we're keeping an eye out for those. Couple others we've got eastern and western screech owls. We've got elf owls, like the smallest owl in the world, I think. And then the northern saw-whet owl, which usually is seen in the north based on its name. So just kind of interesting that they're here in the Trans-Pecos, which when you think about it seems like just straight desert land, but we have these like really mountainous areas that kind of provide an oasis for these birds that prefer like heavily forested areas.
I think that's something fantastic about the Trans-Pecos and really just desert ecosystems in general is that I think they get stereotyped as, oh, there's sand and cactus and rattlesnakes and scorpions and not much else. But you just listed a bunch of different species of owls that are out here. And that's because of these sky islands, right? These mountain areas that have high elevations and all these different species are able to live there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's true. Definitely, yeah. Whenever I explain to people I'm going to school out in West Texas, they're thinking tumbleweeds and cowboy hats and boots and like flat land. But yeah, there's riparian areas. There's, rivers here and yeah, really vast differing ecosystems.
Yeah, and we do have tumbleweeds and cowboy hats.
There is that too.
But thankfully, the flatland, that's not our specialty out here. The mountains are our specialty out here.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
All right. So Haley, share with us a little bit about scaled quail, because that's something that the owl species that Shelby mentioned, unfortunately, most people probably aren't going to get a chance to see those, even if they're living out here in Alpine. But scaled quail like to hang out on Hancock Hill. Sometimes they're right close around campus. So tell us about, you're not studying them on campus, though. Tell us more about your scaled quail and where you are studying them.
Yeah, so scaled quail distributions are more on the high plains and the Trans-Pecos, of course. They don't like to, take advantage of those mountains as our owls and other fun species do. They prefer to stay more on the ground, and they are declining in population along with many other of our quail species. So the focus for the ranch in particular that I'm working on is increasing the populations for hunting due to the Great Texas Freeze in 2021 sort of decimating that population and bringing them down. So there have been a few studies done in 2016 time, and then we just recently had this management effort be picked back up, of course, after that freeze. And I'm here to continue that. And so we're just looking at ways that the quail use the ranch and what kind of habitat they prefer, whether the supplemental feeders are helping them, which of course they like the food, so they will follow those feeders, and how they're doing over the winter. And yeah, it's a gorgeous place to be studying and just super happy to be here and excited to really get a better grasp of what I'm going to be doing and working on. So.
Yeah, I think something about your project to just share for people that aren't familiar with work in the natural resources is you mentioned the impacts of the winter freeze, the 2021 freeze still ongoing. And from our perspective, we've made it through the freeze and maybe some pipes burst in your house or whatever, but that's been 3 years, so we've all recovered from it. But wildlife populations of certain species are going to take longer than that. And so there's a need to study those long-term effects and sometimes help them get back on track.
Right.
So, Jared, I'm going to come back over to you. Can you tell us a little bit about your project and how that interfaces with your role in Alameda Creek Conservation Initiative, because you're doing both of those things together?
Right. I'm mainly trying to get access to private ranchers. We have some cost share programs to help put grassland restoration projects together. And then with the Alameda Creek Conservation Program, I am trying to improve the Alameda Creek watershed. And some of these low-tech process-based practices, I think could eventually help out the Alameda Creek. Alameda Creek is a seasonal creek, big, lot of I guess it would be a riparian forest type canopy cover of cottonwoods and ash, and just good habitat for all kinds of species. So we want to protect that, and that's what some of these practices I'm hoping will help us with.
It's part of such a big picture, and I think that's part of what I love about your project is that it's not it's process based, right? It's not just that you're doing this one activity and you need to reseed. We know reseeding is important for native vegetation, but we can't just throw the seed out on the ground. You have to have a healthy ecosystem, and you're trying to restore that process to it.
Yes. Years ago in the 50s and 60s, a lot of the ranchers had put in these big spreader dams and ponding. They wanted to catch all the water in ponds for livestock, which is, probably the right thing to do maybe at that time. But now we're capturing a lot of the water in our tanks and ponds, and it may not be getting into the rivers as slow. And also we got brush encroachment now. 100 years ago, it was probably primarily grasslands. So what the water hits the ground, it does shed off. It runs off quickly, and it's down to the river and through the river and gone. So if we hold it in and slow it down, I think we can hang on to some of these areas for a lot longer.
Explain that term encroachment real quick.
Encroachment, I would say, is just the brush species moving in. I saw pictures from back in the Miter Peak, for example, back in the 50s. It had hardly any brush on it, and now it's full of white brush, cat claw, just a bunch of Davis Mountain mixed brush is what we call it. So it's a combination of drier times, big, heavy grazing 100 years ago. And then parts of our landscapes out here were farmed, accidentally farmed. They tried it, trying to, come in here, have a piece of land and making it worth something. But then we just don't have the rainfall. We don't get the organic matter, and then it doesn't sustain itself.
Okay, thanks. So after asking you to share this link that you have between your project and your work and work that you've been doing, Shelby, I'm going to shift gears to you. Mm-hmm. You're coming into this field and you've not been working in natural resources for a little while. So tell us about what you were doing before this and how you got here today. And if you have any lessons that you've brought with you from that, because we talked about this on a previous episode of taking lessons from whatever kind of work you've done with you into life to help you do better at whatever comes next.
Yeah, so basically my reason for coming back to school, because I obviously completed my undergrad before I could do my master's. But yeah, that was with environmental science, and I really enjoyed that experience. I thought it was super cool. And after I graduated, the pandemic happened. I kind of took some time off, and getting a job in this field is kind of hard if you don't have a lot of volunteer experience. And so I just, volunteered here and there a little bit. Throughout that time, I kind of sustained myself with what I put myself through school with, which was bartending and serving. But that has allowed me to gain kind of like the people skills that a lot of scientists and researchers may not have. Because, you're talking to people every day. You're learning how to kind of manage like so many different kinds of people and their emotions and like what they've experienced through life. So definitely I feel like that is something that I have that maybe a lot of others don't, that I'm bringing to the table. But yeah, I kind of lacking that like hands-on experience. So I kind of thought, hey, I should go back to school so I can actually get out in the field and gain the scientific skills that I'm lacking.
Yeah, that's such a valuable message for students that might be listening, I think, is that you can, whatever you've been doing, you can take some of those skills and apply them to what you want to do next. And also, I think it's really good to be able to look at yourself and say, this is where I've been and this is what I'm lacking, and then identify that and go chase down what you need to get better at it.
100%. Yeah. I think it can be really hard to look at yourself like that and like not compare yourself to other people. But while, exactly. You're recognizing the things in yourself that you have, and then how do I build on those skills? And really you want to like surround yourself with people who like you want to be, right? So they have all these volunteer opportunities here, so I'm going to take advantage of that, and I'll bring to them like my ability to get along with pretty much anybody.
I love it. That's great.
Yeah.
All right, Haley, I'm going to rat you out. Everybody can't see you, but she's wearing a red shirt, but it's not a Sul Ross shirt. It's a Texas Tech shirt. So, Haley, my question for you today is, having gone to school in a different part of the state, wildlife program, right? You've got kind of the traditional wildlife undergraduate experience, and then you came straight into graduate school. But what has been different for you about being in the Trans-Pecos and Alpine compared to being up in the Panhandle? And has anything surprised you in what you've learned already?
Yeah, a lot has surprised me. First off, I thought the weather would be the exact same. I know this is like not to do with school, but the weather is so much nicer. I think the mountains really help kind of cool down during the day. But other than the weather, which is great, the town is different. Of course, you don't have traffic all the time, or you can't go to Target whenever you're there. But it's been great. My goal after coming out of Texas Tech was to find a more close-knit community for my graduate studies. I wanted to know almost everybody and be able to go to whoever I wanted to go to and just say, hey, I know you, you know me, and it wasn't like that at Tech. So it was more of a, yeah, I've heard of them, but I've never spoken to them, or I've seen them in the hallway, or yeah, I know where that professor's office is, but I've never had a conversation with them. But here it's like I've met every single professor. I'm, know something about them. They know something about me. Especially even when I came here in April to interview, I was invited to meet the graduate students, and, everybody came into this big room, and we were just all talking and discussing, and, like, what do you like about Alpine? What do you like about Sul Ross? And it was just, barely anything bad other than the, availability for certain resources in a small town. But it's been amazing. I love Sul Ross. I love BRI. Borderlands Research Institute. It's amazing. So.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people in natural resources, there's so much about this area that's appealing, and it's easy to fall in love with it. And hard to imagine yourself somewhere else, although Lubbock is also good.
Yeah, it's okay.
All right, so everybody in this group is fairly new into their projects, and so I've asked the other groups what's next, but I'm not going to ask you guys that. Instead, I want to ask you, what are you most excited about for your project coming up?
I guess for me, I'd just say to see if I can get folks on board with some of these projects and try to make a difference to our landscapes.
I think that's one of the fun things about grad school is you finish it, and at the end you've got this product, and you're like, I did something over the last couple of years, right? You're going to do it. You might not feel like it right now, but
yeah, it's gonna. I have a wife, 3 kids, so. I'm busy as it is, so it may take me a few years to get through it, but we'll see.
That's okay. Even if it takes you 4 years, it's exciting to see where it's going. Absolutely. Shelby, what are you looking forward to?
Yeah, for my project in particular, it may lead me to some really beautiful hiking country. So I'm actually really excited about that and like getting in shape for that, because it's not quite there right now.
You and I may need to do some hiking together because I'm not quite there right now either.
But I think sometimes, like, thinking about all the work you have to do and all the classwork can be a little overwhelming. But, like, one way to really center yourself, or at least for me in particular, is, like, getting outside and, like, reminding yourself why you're out here. And, like, it's beautiful out here. So I am, like, thoroughly looking forward to getting out into some really beautiful areas and just being in it, I think that's the best.
I think that's a good tip of the day today for anyone listening is if you're feeling stressed, just go outside, look at those mountains. Remember that those poor students at Texas Tech aren't looking at that same kind of beautiful view. And just take a deep breath and enjoy where you are today. Yeah. Haley?
Getting my hands on birds, I'm excited to put those satellites on there and see where life takes them. While I'm sitting in the office working on homework, I'll be like, wonder what they're up to out there on 9 Point. Another thing is to be able to see all the diverse species out there. I've already seen some elk and, of course, the mule deer and bighorn. We saw some this past weekend. And excited to see the bison. Sorry, excuse me. The bison herd that is apparently out there, which I did not get to see yet, but just excited to be in a beautiful place doing some beautiful things. And like you said, it's not just for you. When you're working on a thesis, you have something tangible after and know that you did something for your species of interest.
Yeah, and the fun parts never get old, right? It doesn't matter if you've held 100 quail. You capture that quail 101. I've not captured that many, but I can imagine with other things, right?
Yeah.
You capture it, and it's so cool to get to hold that animal in your hand and have that experience, to really get to study it and know it at that level of, okay, we've got transmitters on these. What are they doing today while I'm doing my homework? And get that peek into what is otherwise kind of a mystery to us.
Right.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining me today. That has been the Lobocast, and we'll see you guys out in the field. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.